stupid fast for everybody. Before I get started, what do I want to say? The only thing about the debate that I didn't like, that I was like, I don't want to say disappointed in necessarily, but it was just that we really didn't talk about evolution or the story behind how evolution became a scientific theory at all, because Jimbob, his entire thing rested upon it seems that his strategy was to say that evolution isn't a scientific theory because it doesn't perform any experiments, therefore it doesn't validate its own hypothesis. And he was fully committed to that, but he was so incredibly wrong. And I think I pretty clearly pointed out how wrong he was, that he then had to spend the entire time trying to make a case that without an experiment you can't make claims about anything in the natural world or whatever, which is just so stupid. I'm here after a nice palate cleanser of watching Palace Cat videos. Okay. Well, anyways, can you prove something that's unprovable with a science experiment 500 million years ago? I don't know if that's you're insulting evolution by saying that or what. That was his strategy. Yeah, I thought he would just try to do silly philosophy stuff, but oh well. That science is capable and pretty good at discovering accurate information regarding the natural world?
I would say, no, the scientific method assumes accurate information, then it can do experiment. I would say science, the method, isn't actually required to ascertain accurate information of the world. For instance, I can go out and do proper taxonomy of trees and animals and things just by classification and identity, and be able to come to some good knowledge based on what things are. And so that's a description of what something is. I hold that the scientific method gives us an explanation of what causes a phenomenon we see.
Yeah, and do you think so? Yeah, a person like T-Jump or whatever would have probably jumped down his throat with that, because pretty sure one of his big things is science doesn't establish cause and effect for anything. Science never does that. Philosophy of Science 101, so on and so forth. What you kind of said there was, well, but this was, I mean, I feel like he was disagreeing with me just because he went into this really debate-brained and was just kind of, he wasn't going to agree with anything that I say. Well, there are other ways of ascertaining true knowledge. Like if I am hungry, I am not using scientific knowledge. I'm aware that I am hungry. You're wearing a red hat. I'm not using the scientific method so sure. That was the first thing I kind of heard from you. And I totally agree. But what I'd like to know is, for example, you can't observe. Shout out to me for wearing the same sweatshirt, not the same T-shirt though. Atoms. I look exactly the same. But we have a robust scientific framework that tells us that atoms exist and their properties of them. So I'm not talking specifically, I'm talking generically. I just use that as an example. So do you think that science is capable and very good at discovering accurate information about the natural world? We spent so long on this, and it's like he said yes and no at the same time.
The scientific method.
All Christians should be required to debate Justin. Facts.
I would say is not doing that, which is what's in question. If you're referring to science colloquially as a body of knowledge, then I would grant that. Specifically, I'm referring today to the scientific method.
Okay, so if this is like too much of a meta conversation, then that's fine. But what is it that you think the scientific method is not doing here, or is not good at, or is not capable of?
Making its way through. You mean in regards to evolution?
No, just in regards to the scientific method, because I'm asking just a generic question about the scientific method and being able to declare with confidence that these are true things about the natural world. My strategy here was I only wrote down 4 questions in total for my cross-examination, because I figured we'd get stuck on not this one, although we did get stuck on this one, and then I never even asked my third question, but I figured we'd get stuck on, if evolution was true, what would the evidence look like? But yeah, what I wanted to do was just set up, do you think that science is good at figuring out true facts about the natural world? Yes. And then my next question, which we do get to, I believe, was, which scientific theories do you reject and why? And he wouldn't answer that, because I was trying to get him to admit, you believe science, you accept some theories, but you reject others. Now I want to try to see if we can figure out why you reject certain ones and not others. And then we would try to see what is it about evolution, the methodological approach to studying evolution that you have the problem with, which we did kind of cover that, I guess, mostly during his cross-examination, though.
Gotcha. Yeah, scientific method doesn't produce truth claims, for one. It assumes truth claims. So we start with assumptions about the world. We assume that they're regular. We call them things. These are...
So yeah, I don't agree with that the scientific method doesn't produce truth claims. It starts with them. It doesn't produce like philosophical truth claims, and I would say it doesn't prove its own axioms and its own presuppositions. But when we learn things about the natural world that we accept as fact, the scientific method does do that. And Jimbob thinks that way too. Colloquially, that's how we think. Yeah, part of the scientific method, Baba. Yep.
First order statements about the world. Scientific method is actually looking at a phenomenon in the world that's natural and asking a question of causality, and that's what the scientific method is. The scientific method doesn't actually produce truth statements.
But
it produces likelihood statements.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure you're conceding that the scientific method is a good method that gets us to drawing conclusions about what we think is what we think are the best explanations for what's happening. Yeah.
Yes, causally. Yeah, I agree with that. Causally, but not what something is, right? The scientific method doesn't tell us.
I don't know what this is. It does a good job of telling us causally what happens, but not what something is. I don't know where you could possibly be going with that. Like, the scientific method is what tells us the properties of subatomic particles, for example. So the scientific method is what tells us what a proton is, you know? And it also does tell us what causes the proton to be positively charged. It has 2 up quarks and 1 down quark. I don't remember exactly how that works, but the certain combination of them. Word salad, yeah, maybe that's the strategy. The strategy is just to talk lots, sound smart, not answer any questions.
What something is, right?
If you guys just want to, if you want to raise your blood pressure, he uploaded our debate. Go and read the comments. They're just unbelievable.
We declare what something is and we properly categorize, and then we go, oh, like for instance, the scientific method. If I watched, if me and you were on like a hike and we saw bubbling water out of the hot springs, right? You and I would both go, that's bubbling water, right?
I would hope so, yeah.
Yeah, but you wouldn't agree that we're doing science right there, right?
No, yeah, I talked about. See, I did a pretty good job of this, but he's asking me questions and it's my cross-examination, and I kind of didn't realize he was doing a lot of this until about 5 minutes had passed, and then I was like, wait, shit, I need to be very strict with my time about this already.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's the distinction I'm making.
I'm trying to ask if there are scientific ideas you reject, and you kind of say that I reject that science has anything to say. I felt like Jimbob was making tag arguments instead of his interpretation of the scientific argument. 44 letters remain. Bing bong, all hell spanking. What an absolutely perfect use of the character limit. Yeah, get your money's worth on that. I thought that would be his strategy. Maybe he was cleverly, in a way, hiding that he was doing that, but it really didn't, the debate really didn't focus on much of that. About what is or what is not true, but philosophy does not tell you what is anything. That's not exactly true, because I mean you can deductively conclude things and then determine what something is, like, in a way. So I wouldn't totally agree with that. You know, I would say it supports like what is likely to be true. However, I'm pretty sure that there are all kinds of things you agree are true statements about the world that we couldn't know if it weren't for science. Like, for example, that radio waves exist, that atoms exist. So I feel like it's not exactly a contradiction, but I think I don't know, it doesn't seem coherent.
Well, Eric, do you agree?
Yeah, so this is what I was talking about. I do believe that he does hold that certain claims that we only know because of the scientific method are facts, but he's sitting here telling us science doesn't discover, or it doesn't make truth claims. You know, I mean, it's a tool used to arrive at them. Pearson, you should be canonized as a saint for your patience. Yeah?
Agree that there's a difference?
Well, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't care.
Between describing something in the natural world and doing the scientific method?
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is we arrive there by doing the scientific method. There are some cases where we need the scientific method to be able to do that.
No, hold on a second. We need the scientific method.
Did you guys see that? Kitty cat spotted.
We need the scientific method to be able to
There she
do
is.
that.
No, hold on a second. We need the scientific method. Okay, wait. So first, the question was, do you agree that there's a distinction between describing the natural world and doing the scientific method? You said yes. Then you said you need the scientific method to get there. Can you tell me where there is you're referring to?
To being able
Certain claims, understandings, knowledge about the natural world that's not observable through our ordinary senses.
to make to be able to like make statements or have knowledge about the world.
You agreed that us both pointing to bubbling water is not doing a scientific method. So now it sounds like you're contradicting.
No,
previously.
because I'll explain it again. There are some things like the existence of radio waves
Chad's just going crazy because Kitty Cat appeared.
that kind of knowledge can only be revealed to us if we go through the scientific method, because it's not directly observable. I mean, the way we observed it was by doing science, but you need that specific framework in order to investigate it. So that's the issue I'm having with this. You say, I don't think science is how you do that, yet I think that there are many things you think are facts about the world that we couldn't know unless we went through the scientific method. If evolution was true, what would the evidence look like?
If evolution was a scientific theory, that's what's in question. It wouldn't.
So we gotta skip. So this is the highlights video. So it's an hour and 18 minutes long instead of 3 hours long like the full one. And I just cut out all the waffling. You know, I included the parts where I very clearly walk him through the logic and show him like the first time not addressing it. But yeah, I got rid of the waffling. So Rimjob pretty much owned Peterson for most of Peterson's cross-examination. Even after Peterson slowly was catching on, he could stop him from doing it. Yeah, I don't actually agree with you there. He's basically stuck the whole debate on his lame evolution is not science because it doesn't follow my specific scientific method. Yeah, the whole there are no experiments thing was, first of all, it's literally false because we do evolutionary experiments in the present. And I tried talking about them and he wouldn't let me, but let's just, Pearson should make a video about young Dawn reborn living Christian. Young Dawn reborn leaving Christian. I've never heard of that person, I guess. Anyways, great pause face. Yeah.
If it were true, it wouldn't be a theory because theories aren't true. Theories are likely explanations of causal relationships between variables and phenomena.
Yeah,
So
that's
again, your question,
what we
let's
mean
do
by true.
something. Well, no, because
Yes, it is.
things that we call facts. For instance, that heat goes from hot to cold, right? We call that a fact, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Heat goes from hot
That the Earth orbits the sun, that's a fact. It's also a theory. It's called heliocentric theory.
to cold. Pressure goes from high to low. These are things we call true facts. We call them lawful. Science doesn't come to a theory and call it. It never calls it true, or otherwise it would be a law.
No.
Yes. Are scientific theories true? Yes or no?
They are true. They are true.
Yeah, so I wrote about this in my first book, Rational Answers to Stupid Questions, but theories don't become laws. Laws are just observations about the natural world. Laws, I don't know. I wish I could have had something more to say about this, but I don't know. Are laws deductive and theory? I know theories are inductive, but would it be accurate to say that scientific laws are deductive? Are scientific laws deductive, whereas theories are inductive? Because that would have been an important, not exactly, scientific laws and theories don't neatly fit into that framework. Scientific laws describe consistent phenomena. They're just simply observed mathematical statements. They're typically descriptive rather than explanatory. Laws are often used deductively because they allow scientists to make predictions, so on and so forth. I mean, I know that theories are inductive, so I don't know. Deduction is used to test theories and laws by applying them. So I don't know. I think that actually is a pretty decent generalization between the two. But deductive claims don't become inductive claims because they function differently. So that's what I would have liked to have said there, I guess. But no, yeah. But the other thing is a law doesn't have, what a terrible pause face. There we go. A law doesn't have a broader generalized explanation behind it. It's just an observed fact. Entropy always increases within a system. Universal gravitation. evolution actually is a law because, like, Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, for example, is never, ever, ever, ever observed, no matter what. So it's a law that allele frequencies always change, or genetic material always changes every single generation. But yeah, so no, theories. It's a very bad and stupid talking point that if it was true, it would be a law, not a theory. But also, evolution is a law, and there's also a theory explaining the law. It's kind of like gravity. General relativity is a theory of gravity, whereas universal gravitation and Newton's laws are laws of gravity. So shame on me for doing a pretty bad job of describing this. What are you guys saying? The laws are deductive. That's pretty easy to understand, Peterson. Geez, Tiger Shark. Theories include laws. I mean, yes, that is true. Yeah, it'd be weird if all of our theories if all of our laws turned into theories. That's another thing I wrote in my book. If the destiny of a law was just to become a theory, then eventually we would have no scientific laws anymore. We would only have scientific theories. So, no, sorry, I got that wrong. If theories became laws, then the other way around, there would be no more scientific theories. My bad. Descriptions about the world. I know that you think this because you think atoms exist and it's called atomic theory.
If evolution occurred in the grand scheme of things, I actually have no idea what it would look like.
So this was catastrophic of him to admit this, that he has no idea what the evidence would look like, because then he's not qualified to be here and have this debate. And he really tried to work his way around this by saying that, no, you're talking about data. I'm talking about whatever. And then I just said, nope, the theory is a collection of data. So this is where it really, it went really bad for him a lot faster than I remember.
Because I'm not sure what you're claiming is causing why the phenomenon. So, if someone said, there's a scientific theory I have that this process occurred and produced this observation we call diversity in life, I'm going to ask a question. Interesting. Can you isolate what you think is causing the diversity of life such that you can
save that for your cross-examination? My next
That's what
question,
I'm saying. Is like your question has nothing to do with the scientific method.
I would disagree.
You're asking a philosophical question.
No, we're trying to get there.
I thought you didn't want to do philosophy.
We're not. So I'm confused as to, if you don't even know how to delineate the data that would say these evolutionary ideas are true or false, why is it that you're claiming that evolution? So this is, to interrupt myself here, this is probably the most important thing that you have to do when you talk to people that deny evolution. I don't think I did this with Kent Hovind. I guess I should. Well, with him, my strategy was to prove that his alternative theory, which, we weren't here to discuss Jimbob's alternative, but I proved to Kent Hovind by his own admission that his theory can't explain anything and the data contradicts it, which was extremely satisfying. But you absolutely have to ask these people, if it was true, what would the evidence look like? Because if they don't know, then you need to ask them, I'm confused as to why you have such strong opinions on this. And then you can just expose how either ignorant they are, how Dunning-Kruger they are, or how dogmatic they are because they're just going to appeal to the Bible or something like that. The other thing is they generally are only capable of giving extremely stupid straw man arguments about what evolution is supposed to be, and then you point that out. Or they ask for things, and because they typically are not at all read up on how evolution, or like the data that backs up evolution, they'll say, well, we should expect to find transitional forms or something like that, and just point out, wow, yeah, I mean, we have thousands of them, so let's go over them together using the power of friendship. All right, chat. I ain't reading all that. So I'm confused as to, if you don't even know how to delineate the data that would. Or if someone asks you what's the evidence that would look like if God exists, there's a pretty simple explanation for that. I'm not really sure, but I know that a perfect omni-being knows exactly what that evidence would be, and clearly that God has not revealed that information. Say these evolutionary ideas are true or false, why is it that you're claiming that evolution is not a scientific theory? And I know you also don't believe in evolution either, so why either of those things?
The topic of the debate is whether or not evolution is a scientific theory. The question
Yes.
of
And you don't know you don't know what kind of data that theory would produce.
data. I'm
So
not interested in data because the scientific method
Jimbob,
is
stop,
more
please.
than data.
So
I'm not interested in data.
you don't know what the data that would be produced by that body of knowledge that is the scientific theory would even be. So I'm curious as to why you think that it's not, when you seem to be ignorant about how you would even ascertain whether or not it is.
Well, because if you
I would say a sound deductive argument for God's existence would be, well, yeah, but its premises would only be sound. They would only pass verification if they can be, if they can be verified, which is going to appeal to some. I mean, there are people that say like, oh, I'm not an empiricist, or no, you wouldn't do it through empiricism, but the soundness of your premises can only be verified that way. And then that's just going to get back to exactly what I said earlier. I don't know, but God knows what that evidence would be. So
you say, if evolution was true, what do you think it would look like? What would the evidence look like?
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking, what are you claiming is actually occurring, such that I'm asking myself the question: did this happen? This is a question.
I know that you know what
causality,
evolution is. I'm not gonna spell it out here.
yeah, like he was trying to tell me to tell him what the evidence would look like. That I found that to be a little bit weird.
For you, a scientific theory is going to consist of a very large body of knowledge that's been collected by going through the scientific method. There's no way that you disagree with that. So
Yep.
if evolution was true, what would that body of knowledge within the theory look like?
It would look like starting with an observation and taking evolution down the scientific method steps and arriving at a theory. That's what it would look like for me.
That's why you're describing the process, not what is the data.
He just like said the scientific method. That was his answer. Oh man, so bad. Yes, this is the way to do it, folks. Don't just spam them with facts. They reject the facts, or well, they can always hit back. They can just play ping pong with your claims. Ask them what the evidence would be, and then give them what they asked for. This is the best way to do it.
Data that would either confirm this idea or allow us to be able to throw this idea out. I need to know what the data would be.
We don't confirm scientific theories with data. We confirm them with
absolutely
experiments.
do. What is it that the experiments give us to be able to draw conclusions?
Right, fair enough, but
Data.
I'm not just looking at data without an experiment.
I'll ask it one more.
Yeah, fair enough. Then he rambled for several minutes and it didn't go anywhere. So then how does this end?
Time, and then I think I know maybe a different direction we can go. If evolution was a scientific theory, then it would possess a collective body of knowledge that supports the theory. What kind of knowledge would the evolutionary theory contain within it?
What kind of knowledge would the scientific...
What sorts of data would confirm evolution and be part of its theory?
What types of data it would include is introduced causal mechanism that produces the phenomenon that's observed. It would include that data.
Okay, so...
I mean, that wasn't a terrible answer, but it also wasn't an answer because I could have addressed that by saying the introduction of new genetic material is what would cause it to happen. But ultimately, I decided it was best to just move on here because he's really not answering the question at all. We don't confirm scientific experiments with data. Well, no, he said scientific theories with data. You have to have an experiment. And don't ask if experiment is this the video where I wrote that? No, that was in the original video where I wrote that.
I guess that's what we're going to have to go with. I don't really understand. Do you agree or disagree that if evolution is true, then it would mean that all life on the planet is related?
If the theory of evolution were true, then assuming that organisms are related still doesn't give you the process of speciation as some sort of mechanistic causal.
That's fine. That's not required to know that organisms are related or to be able to test whether or not they are related. But it's very clearly an implication of evolutionary theory that all organisms on this planet would be related.
If you're just saying all life has similar chemistry observably, and all life is bound to similar laws of physics and chemistry.
That's nowhere close to where I'm going with this.
Well, I'm saying relatedness. Like I'm just saying.
I'm
like,
talking about genetics. I'm talking about Darwin proposed that there must be a hereditary molecule, and that would be passed down from organism to organism, and that is what is responsible for the traits that organisms have, and the modification of that genetic molecule is what would cause variations in populations, and so it would change over time. Then he had ideas about what it.
Yeah, so I do this multiple times, especially during his cross-examination, and he just yelled at me and shut me down every time. I tell him the story of how the theory was developed because he spent the whole time pretending, well, how do I want to say this? He spent the whole time completely ignoring the fact that we can understand evolution in the historical context of how it was gradually developed. He's pretending as if the theory of evolution was proposed today, and we have access to all the evidence, and so I'm just retrofitting the evidence into the theory of evolution. No, the theory of evolution is hundreds of years old. Darwin's version of it is only about 170 years old or whatever it is. But, where was I going with this? But when Darwin proposed it, there was so much we didn't know. And as those things were confirmed multiple times, it developed into a theory. And he was not having any of that. Okay, what's going on here, chat? What are you guys talking about? The All-Star game. The All-Star game was so much worse than I thought it would be. That they stopped the final game. They stopped it when the score was 11-1, and I timed it. It was 18 or 19 minutes worth of commercials and that tribute to the NBA on TNT crew. It was like in the middle of the game. Like the game is so bad that we're doing this. It was horrible. The 200 to 201 score games a couple years ago were better than that was. Why did you say that thing about Darwin if it was proven wrong? Darwin's idea about gemicles? It doesn't matter that what he proposed would be causing it. Gemmucules was proven wrong. He was proven right that there is a hereditary molecule that's passed on from organism to organism. What else do we got here? Now people are just talking about the All-Star game. Okay.
It could be. He called them gemmucules or something like that. We know he was wrong, but we now know about genetics. And so anyways, go ahead.
So I'm just I'm going to ask you when you talk about similar.
Oh, wait a minute. What? There we go.
Talking about when you say related, you're talking about similar genetic structure, right? Physical.
Yep.
Okay. So
does all life on the planet have that?
If you assumed that we're related because we all have similar material in us, how would you determine that we're not related but we had similar material in us?
Again, you're not the one doing the cross-examination right now.
Well, your question assumes this, though.
That's how science works. Science is predicated on we take assumptions and then we go and test them. So, the way you stated that earlier was you kind of got it backwards. We actually didn't know how to test genetic similarities scientifically. I mean,
oh yeah. This is what I was talking about. He gets it back. God damn it, these pause faces. He got it backwards. He said, "Oh, we see genetic similarities, therefore they're related," or something like that. And it's like, no. We proposed that we would find out they're related to the degree the taxonomic system predicts they are related, and that's exactly what happened. It's exactly like forensics. All of the data already exists. We're not making new data, but you confirm what you think happened. Person A did it. Person A's DNA is there. Their fingerprints are there. It's on camera. So on and so forth. What kind of person would say, yeah, but is there an experiment of the person killing the person?
How to do it statistically within a species. Gregor Mendel unveiled that for us, but we didn't know how to really deep down scientifically test the relatedness between organisms. Like we could see how closely related you and I are, or we could see is there a relationship between species. Now we do know how to do that. It was predicted
So evolution could have failed the prediction that all life on this planet would be related, and in addition to that, it predicted certain degrees of relatedness between organisms. We should be most closely related to the great apes, and then we should be more closely related to all mammals in general than to any other kind of life on this planet. Literally all of those tests have passed. So how do you reconcile the data that confirmed what evolutionary scientists thought would happen?
This guy's really good.
Well, I would reconcile it by calling it confirmation bias, because the question I just asked shows that it is.
Oh, confirmation bias. So if you find the data that you predicted, that's confirmation bias. Look, like, how do I want to say this? That's how confirmation bias happens. That's what you do when you do confirmation bias. But this isn't confirmation bias. The audacity, yeah, the Lion, the Witch, and the audacity of this bitch. Oh, man. Anyways.
How would you determine any organism wasn't related to another organism?
If they shared 0 genes, so that would be how it would work. But
is everything related?
That's not the case.
Is everything related?
You're gonna have to save that for your time. I only have 7 minutes left here.
Well, what I'm saying is that the assumption here is that everything's related because of similar structure, and everything has carbon.
The assumption was that everything is related. That was the original claim, and then we figured out scientifically how you test that, and it confirmed it. And now you're sitting here saying, "Oh, just because they share genes, that means they're related." That was how we confirmed the idea. And now you're saying, "Well, no, it's not."
Yeah, it is.
Begging the question.
Premise one.
Jimbob, stop. You can do this when it's your turn.
I'm not cross-examining. I'm correcting you.
Yes, but during a cross-examination, I get to decide how my time is used.
Premise one, if you started with the assumption that everything is ancestral, and you started with that assumption, and you found a fossil, in this case Tiktaalik, how could it not be a transitional fossil if you started with the assumption that everything's in transition? There's no such thing as a non-transitional fossil, which is question begging.
This might be his best attempt in the entire debate here. So we find a transitional fossil, but wait a minute. Don't the evolutionists say every fossil is a transitional fossil? We do. That does get said every now and then. But yeah, the point is, and I'm pretty sure I make this point, the Tiktaalik fossil was predicted before it was discovered. And its time and place specifically were predicted, and we found it there. We didn't wait for somebody to accidentally discover it, and then we just said, well, okay, this is, let's fit this into the model. The model predicted that it would exist in the time and place that it was found. Asking questions is begging the question, and confirming things is confirmation bias. It's in the name, people. Duh.
No, because the transitional fossils have predictable characteristics from them. We should also expect to not be able to find the organisms of the present in the past, and indeed we don't. So anyways, how is that anything other than so evolution said we should find this thing, and then it did find this thing. What is your response to that?
That's starting with a narrative and finding evidence to support your premise one.
What the hell do you think science is? Oh, you have a hypothesis and then you found evidence? That's just what does he think?
It tells us nothing about whether or not evolution is a scientific theory.
This would apply for literally everything. Oh, you think the nucleus exists? Well, then the gold foil experiment that confirmed that's just confirmation bias.
We already explained this, and I thoroughly made this distinction.
What exists? Yeah, it did turn Phil, bro, for a moment.
Is that what exists has nothing to do with, ultimately, what causes X. I already told you, we agreed that looking at a bubbling thing or a fossil, if we agree that's a fossil, if we agree what things are, we're asking a different question in evolution. We're asking a question about the observation that we see diversity in life. We're asking a question, what causes diversity in life? That's the question, right? That has to run through scientific method.
That's actually, so, like, literally no, and this didn't really get hashed out very well, but what I say at a certain point is you can use experimental data, which is good because it advances the theory, but it's not like before you can do experiments, something can't be a theory, because for atomic theory, it did have to basically get confirmed with, those were experiments, but for the Big Bang, that was solidified. Like, the experiments we have add very, very little to, well, I shouldn't say that. They don't add very little, but the Big Bang Theory was fully established before we built particle accelerators. What else? I mean, the germ theory of disease was pretty well established, I think, before we really started doing experiments. Well, that's not really true, because Semmelweis did have all the he had all those recommendations for hand washing in the hospitals, and then they saw drops in mortality. So that's probably not a great example, but we don't need to know what's causing, and this would go into genetics. We don't need to know that to confirm the idea that life has evolved over time. Now, genetics obviously helped a great deal, but we weren't able to do any of that really until... This is a good question, actually, because I know we were looking at DNA in the 1970s, but we could only take a look at really, really tiny fragments of DNA at a time. But yeah, the real rigor of tying genetics, like with regard to DNA, I mean, we were doing statistical analyses of relationships really early on, and like finding that there is a hereditary molecule or whatever. But anyways, I'm talking too much. The using genetics to figure out relatedness, like really sophisticatedly with the DNA molecule, that really only started happening in the 21st century here. So again, my point is, you don't need to do those things. It's not like, because the other good question would be, okay, what is the single piece of information that gets added to the body of knowledge that makes it officially become a theory here? What is that?
Method.
This is a
Finding a fossil
complete
doesn't
red
tell you.
herring. This is a complete red herring. Yes, because we could apply it to anything that's scientific that you believe in. For example, do you think protons and neutrons exist?
I'm not sure. I didn't observe them directly.
That was so incredibly dishonest the way he did that. I don't know if protons and neutrons exist. I wasn't there. I didn't observe them. Creationists do this when you ask them the most obvious questions. Like, what are the good ones? I can't remember. There are some really good ones with Kent Hovind and Eric Hovind where people ask him, so they ask him something about like the Genesis narrative, and like all they say is, I don't know, I wasn't there. So pathetic. I'll just conclude by laying out why what he's been doing here is a complete red herring. Protons and neutrons exist. Virtually nobody has a problem accepting that the scientific body of knowledge tells us that they exist. Nobody has a problem just saying that that is true. We could call it a fact. Now, but an observation that protons and neutrons exist, the experiments, like the gold foil experiment that confirms it, well, that doesn't tell you why a proton is positively charged and a neutron is neutrally charged. That tells you nothing about the combination of up and down quarks inside them that gives us its charge. You don't need to know that in order to be able to claim and declare and do science that supports that there are positively charged. And arguing with reality is so exhausting. You're right. It is. That's why I'm yawning so much. And neutral subatomic particles. So that is the end of my time.
In evolution, in the evolutionary theory, what's the observation?
There are like countless different kinds of observations you could make for evolution.
One. The best one that you think supports that it's a theory, the best observation you got.
The fossil record and genetics.
Okay, I observed a fossil or a collection of fossil, right? So the observation is fossils, plural, okay? Is the question, what causes fossils, plural?
What?
I'm asking you, if you found fossils, what's the observation?
Really quick, we don't. So the fossil record was used to build support for evolution, but then there are fossils that were predicted to be out there that we then found. So the fossils are not just observations, and then we form a theory around the observations.
Excuse me.
The fossils are the evidence that was predicted as well.
Stop for a second. You just said we use fossils to support the theory. You didn't even get to the theory because you need an observation to get to the theory first. So you're starting with the theory, and then you're finding fossils. You have to do it the proper scientific way, which is start with an observation. You don't assume the theory because you didn't get there yet. You have to start with the observation, not tie an observation to your assumed theory. This is not science. This is pseudoscience. So again, if you're going to...
Yeah, so once again, he's accusing evolution of doing confirmation bias by just saying it took all the fossils and then said, oh yeah, this is because of evolution, completely ignoring that we have that transitional forms were predicted and then found. What does it mean for a question to be plural? Yeah, I don't know what that part meant either. I've never observed an elevator moving. So, yeah, no, when you get in an elevator, literally the entire universe moves up or down. You don't go anywhere.
Claim that you found fossils. Is there something specific about the fossils you're calling your observation?
Yeah, the characteristics of the fossils. So, for example, Archaeopteryx was predicted to have existed before its fossil was ever found. It should have intermediate traits between theropod dinosaurs and birds, and it does.
Okay, hold on. Again, you're telling a story about the observation. In science, you start with an observation, just purely, and describe it.
I told you about how the data was used to make a prediction and how new evidence was brought to the idea.
Okay, so what are you purely observing with fossils, please? Very clearly.
The anatomical structure is the most obvious thing you can observe with fossils. And then by observing the anatomical structure of modern living birds and extinct theropod dinosaurs, the prediction that an intermediate fossil form should exist was made, and then it was discovered.
Hold on. We're not talking about predictions. We're starting with the scientific method. This should be very easy for you. Now focus.
It is.
The observation is a fossil exists, and it shows the phenotype, the anatomy of a certain bird-like creature, and you're comparing that to an observation you have presently with an anatomical similar bird-like creature, correct? That's the observation.
No, I said theropod dinosaurs and modern birds. So what was... Go ahead.
I'm just saying, in clear language, you're just...
I keep getting phone calls from this number that says spam risk.
discovering a fossil, and you're looking at its anatomy, and you're comparing it to modern anatomy, right? In short, that's your observation.
Yes, because what evolution tells us is that the organisms of today are the descendants of organisms of the past.
Stop going to the theory. I'm asking. Stop.
I'm telling you the scientific steps.
You can't interpret the observation with the theory because the theory is at the tail end of the theory. You have to pretend you.
Again, I'm telling him how the theory was developed. I'm not talking about interpreting the data in the present. I'm talking about how in the past we predicted data that we didn't have yet, and then we found new data. And that just, again, it seems like his whole strategy here was to just make this claim of circular reasoning, and so he was forced to have to ignore the historicity of how the theory was developed. Leo the alchemist, scientist here. How many scientific methods are there? Well, there's no such thing as the scientific method. So, like, in a way, there are innumerable, and in a way, there are none. That's how I would put it, I guess. Hey, Peterson, can I get that review copy? No, I'm not giving you a free copy of my book. Gee, dang it. But you weren't there. How do you know? Yeah, well, many predictions never come true. Yes, which is how we refine our scientific ideas. That's the best part of it. Jesus will never come back, yet Christianity will never be modified. Well, it's been modified countless times because of all the schisms and whatnot, but that aspect of it never will. Does he think you ran? Well,
You don't know what the theory is.
I'm talking. Archaeopteryx was discovered only a few years after On the Origin of Species was published.
I don't care about the story.
Evolution was very much hypothetical at the time, and I'm telling you what happened when it was very hypothetical. Before genetics, before the modern synthesis, before any of that
stop your
stuff.
story. Stop the filibustering storytelling. I don't care about your stories. Observation. There is a fossil that has an anatomy. There is a current animal today that has similar anatomy, right? All I'm asking you is that the observation?
That's one of the observations, yeah.
Okay, let's start with that.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was really hard. Observation. Old thing has traits, typical traits, anatomy. Current thing has...
Thank you, Leo. Kitty cat spotted. Drink. Every time kitty cat comes on screen, drink.
similar things, right? The next question in the scientific method is, what causes the similarity, right? That's your question?
I never asked a question. What are you talking about?
I know, because you didn't...
Jimbob doesn't believe in fossils. I don't know. I was watching a live stream he was doing, and so he doesn't believe in meteorite impacts. And I was like, what? We have the craters. And he went on to say, isn't it funny how we never find the meteorite inside the crater? I was like, no, it's not funny at all, because they travel at like Mach 15, they get vaporized. And then, I'm not shitting you, this is what he said. The crater is in the shape of the meteor, but the meteor's never in there. And then I was like, I gave myself CTE after he said that, because I was like, wait a minute. He thinks that craters are basically like an impression, a footprint of a meteorite. No, the crater is hundreds of times bigger than the meteorite. And then he went on to talk about how he thinks that craters are actually caused by, like Crater Lake in Oregon, the caldera, when the caldera emptied, the volcano collapsed in on itself. He thinks that that's what all craters are. But I was just like, when he said that about the meteors, I was just like, what the fuck? What kind of single-digit IQ understanding of meteorites is that? At this point, I don't believe in the existence of Jimbob. Yeah, me neither.
Didn't do the scientific method.
I'm not sure if I gave him the nickname Rimjob because it's just way too obvious. But I am really happy that he just gets called that all the time now. So,
thank you. So the next question in the scientific method, Peterson, is you start with the observation, and now you're asking a question about the observation in nature.
Mech, you're right. We do find the remnants of meteorites in craters from time to time. Okay, I interrupted that a bunch, so I'm going to go backwards a little bit. He asked Peterson about the first step, and Peterson couldn't get past the third. Now he's doing a cope stream. I did answer the first question. I answered it very clearly.
Things, right? The next question in the scientific method is, what causes the similarity, right? That's your question?
I never asked a question. What are you talking about?
I know, because you didn't do the scientific method. Thank you. So the next question in the scientific method, Peterson, is you start with the observation, and now you're asking a question about the observation in nature, the similarities between these two things. So isn't the question what causes the similarities between these things?
No, you absolutely don't need to know that at all. You could just propose the hypothesis is that organisms have transformed through deep time so as to become completely different species. You don't need to know the cause. You can find the evidence of that without knowing the cause. I don't think I really ever pointed that out very much. I mean, I actually did earlier when I said this is a red herring because we can know all the properties of atoms without knowing why they have those properties. And we still have atomic theory. We just have a better atomic theory now because we know that. So. Omar, I remember you. Okay. Yeah, and then that would be genetics, which was discovered farther down the road.
Hold on a second. If the question is what causes this phenomenon you call similarity in traits or anatomy, right? Your hypothesis is now this. What causes similarity, correct?
A hypothesis is not a question.
The hypothesis is positing X causes Y, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is X in this scientific method? We got to the observation, we asked the question, what causes the similarities, right? You have fossils, and that's your observation, right? A fossil and the current bird that you're referring to. Hypothesis is X causes Y. So what is X?
You could say common descent. You could also say genetics.
Question big.
No,
Isn't common descent to the theory itself?
It's an implication of the theory, yes, but we would look at...
So you can't...
We would look at any... Go ahead.
Common descent is a post-diction, basically story of what is occurring. We're asking for...
No, it's a prediction. You look for the fossils that confirm common descent. Archaeopteryx does that. The funny thing is, Archaeopteryx isn't the common ancestor, it's the intermediate.
Something that's X that you could introduce to produce similarities between these two things, right? The phenomenon is similarities in phenotype, right? So now we're asking the question, what causes similarities in phenotype? And you've skipped to common descent, which you can't introduce into an experiment. You can't introduce common descent and remove it. This is not science.
Omar, do you believe in evolution? I have a Google Meet sitting right here. If you don't believe in evolution, you think you can disprove it or something like that, I will put the link for it in the chat. You can join it, and then you can tell us how much you can own me in front of everybody. How's that, Omar? Eric, Jim confused the hypothesis with the theory. Simple. By the way, the K2 boundary doesn't exist. Similar to Australia, never been there. There's no K2 boundary. Do you mean KT boundary, the Cretaceous Tertiary boundary? I'm just going to wait about 10 more seconds for Omar to completely ignore what I said, proving that. Now I need a soundboard. Come on, Omar. Now Omar's not going to say anything. Because if he says anything, then we'll know he's here, and then he's going to get called out for his cowardice. You guys are as predictable as you are stupid. Congratulations, Omar.
We do evolutionary experiments all the time.
I didn't ask if you think we do evolutionary experience.
I don't think we do. We do.
I'm trying to. I don't care what you think we do right now.
I don't know what he was trying with this whole thing here.
I think that we do. We do. Like I can cite you some.
I don't care if we do right now. We're supposed to be doing one right now, dude. And the observation is similarity in phenotype between an old thing and a new thing. Question: what causes the similarity?
Common descent.
Hypothesis: common descent. So is common descent something you can introduce into an experiment?
Digging up fossils really isn't an experiment, but that doesn't make it not scientific.
That doesn't answer my question. This is cross-examination.
I'm pointing out the red herring of...
No, a red herring? You said X causes Y, okay? Is it correct that you're saying X equals common descent? Y is similarity between these two things?
Yeah, so, common descent is the reason for the Archaeopteryx transitional form. But he's trying to say, no, you need a cause. So then I chirp in and I say, well, genetics is what causes that. But no, actually, the common descent really actually is the cause. And the fossils demonstrate the proof of that cause. I just have to say, I know I already said it, but I'm still looking at the chat and Omar still is choosing not to talk. So Omar must have closed the tab because it's actually hilarious that he knew he couldn't say one word and not admit that he's just being a baby back bitch. So that's hilarious. Pushing people away from science is a really dumb thing to do. Yeah, that's not what's happening here, except Omar.
I have to write that down to keep track of it. What I'm telling you is that the reason the Archaeopteryx transitional form exists is because theropod dinosaurs are the common ancestor of Archaeopteryx and modern.
The question, dude.
It's not begging the question.
Yes, listen, I'm going to ask you.
Is evolution true?
Now.
This is the kind of evidence we would predict. It was found.
I'm not asking for
supporting evidence of
that. Oh man, here's an equivalent to what he's saying. We found footprints at a crime scene. Or there's snow on the ground and we find footprints at a crime scene. We think that Jimbob committed this crime. So what we do is we follow the footprints and we actually see that the footprints go all the way to Jimbob's house. That would be using the same evidence to prove what our hypothesis is. You can say it doesn't prove it indefinitely, but in the spirit of science, it confirms what we thought. That's exactly like what's going on here. Oh, you use the fossils to predict more fossils? That's circular reasoning. No, it's not. For the same reason, the footprints are not begging the question or circular reasoning. Somebody's talking about eating bugs? All right, I'm not interested.
Of X.
Stop it. Peterson, stop. This is my cross-examination.
I know.
Observation. We'll do this real slow. Observation. There's an old thing that shares anatomy with a current thing. I ask a question.
Sup? Not too much, but thank you so much for your generosity. That's very charitable of you, and I appreciate it. Thank you, J-Pomp.
What causes the similarity? Your hypothesis
it's proposed
is
that common descent causes
dude,
it, and then we found the evidence that confirms
Hold
it.
on.
Keep interrupting the minimum, please.
Stop it.
He was asking questions and I would answer them. I mean, it's not my fault that he would he would ask a question and then keep going on, basically changing the subject. When I hear a question, I expect to, that it wants an answer to it or whatever. Oh, somebody's username is eats bugs. Nice.
Okay. You posit that a thing called common descent is the independent variable that causes similar anatomy, correct?
There's no independent variable
I'm asking
in doing
a question.
And your question is flawed, which is why I'm
So
informing
the
you
answer is
that
no.
doing paleontology doesn't have
It's not
independent
science.
variables because it's not an
Thank you.
experiment.
Therefore, it's not science.
That's complete bullshit.
You can see it. Dude, does a scientific
there are
theory-
all
wait,
kinds
wait,
of things.
I'm asking the questions.
I'm
asking the
answering your
Stop interrupting
question.
me. No, you're not. Listen, you just said it. You conceded the debate right now. Why?
No, I
Because
didn't.
Kenneth-
You
Shh,
fucking
Kenneth,
moron.
shh.
It
Oh, now
doesn't.
he's
You
insulted.
don't
Got
have.
you.
No.
Can you develop a science?
That's why on the scoreboard I said fouls 1 for me because of that. But I don't know. I feel like it was deserved. What he's trying to do is force you to do all the science and debate while he just goes, nuh-uh. Yeah, that's probably, yeah, that sounds reasonable, but yeah, I'm too experienced for that to work.
Scientific theory without an experiment.
Absolutely.
You can. Okay, so what's the need? Why use experiments then if you can just develop theories without experiments?
Because they help.
They help? Okay, so I can just develop any theory without an experiment and you just believe it because I don't have an experiment to be the arbiter of two competing hypotheses.
There's more.
Over.
You literally started. You were actually doing this earlier. There's other kinds of evidence, like just mere observations, than experimental evidence. But that doesn't mean that it can't be part of science.
Observations is the first step, dude. I didn't say it's not part of science. I said observation is the first step. Now tell me, how do you arbitrate between two competing viable hypotheses without an experiment?
You can look for evidence, like let's say I think that George Washington was actually a woman, and somebody else says I think he was a man. We go and dig up his bones, and we find
it's not even a scientific theory, dude. Not a scientific theory. We're talking scientific theory.
We're talking about how do you delineate information absent an experiment? It can be done. I just demonstrated to you that it can be done.
I did not ask if you can gather information. I asked you, can you develop a rigorous scientific theory without the scientific method? Again, I'll read my opener here. Scientific theory is a likely explanation of what causes an observable natural phenomenon based on an experiment using the scientific method. The scientific method goes as
2 traits of a conspiracy thinking people are unrealistic expectations of science, an inability to use data to make conclusions. Yeah.
such. Observation. Ask a question. What causes Y? Posit that X causes Y. Introduce X, remove X. Repeat. Conclusion. Develop a scientific theory. Now, I've demonstrated that for your, quote, theory of evolution, when I ask you what's the observation, you say there's this anatomy we found. It looks like this other anatomy we have. Look at the similarities. I ask you, interesting, what causes the similarities? You say common descent. I ask you, can you introduce common descent and remove it? You say no. I say it's not a scientific theory. You say experiments are not necessary for scientific theory. Let's take it down a notch.
Okay. Yes, Jimbob, all of that was correct. Yeah. I mean, it's just like if again, adopting his criticism, forensics can never be science. Big Bang cosmology can never be science. Because all we do are make observations out in nature. But this is all just so stupid.
Here. Let's say scurvy.
Can I address that or not?
No. So so scurvy. No. So scurvy is a symptom, right? A set of symptoms. Scurvy.
I would call it a condition. The symptoms. Yeah. Sure.
Okay, great. It's a condition. Is it fair in the scientific?
See, I think there's another moment like this, but I just want to point this out. Nobody can say that I'm not look, I do on my regular uploads, I do beclown a lot of people, but I talk to these are anonymous and just a lot of them are way worse even than Jimbob here, right? But nobody could, I treated this as like a pretty formal debate. And even my Kent Hovind debates, I really didn't insult the guy hardly ever. So nobody can accuse me of not being genuine and fair because I see people do this all the time. He got scurvy wrong, but he just described it incorrectly. And all I did was just correct him. I didn't bother to be like, wow, you don't even know you don't even know how to describe scurvy. You don't even know the basics, so on and so forth. There's so much of that, but beclown? Yeah, that's a word, isn't it? To beclown somebody means to make fun of them or archaic, to make a fool of another person. Yeah, to beclown somebody. Pretty sure that's a word. To make a fool of another. Yeah, that's a word. Me RM talk words good. Okay.
Method inside of natural science to ask the question, what causes scurvy?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Could I arbitrate between two hypotheses of what causes scurvy without an experiment?
It wouldn't necessarily have to be a controlled experiment. You could literally just read ship logs and see, wait a minute, those people on that ship, they took like not freeze dried, but like preserved vegetable, like fermented cabbage, fermented foods. Like that was a way to like, because they didn't have refrigerators, so they could get their dose of vitamin C. Nobody knows what vitamin C is back then, but anyways, you could literally just look at the historical record and you could say, hey, wait a minute, these people were, they had that kind of food, and then this other group of people, all they ate were like meat preservatives and crackers and things like that. They got scurvy, and then they didn't. That would be supporting evidence. Now, ideally, you would go on to do experiments that help validate.
Hold on, I understand, Peterson. Hold on.
Yep.
What you just said is that's an observation, and that's the moment you're actually forming a hypothesis, right? Right.
No, I told this was so bad on his part. I make the initial observation and then I collect more data that confirms my observation. He keeps saying, trying to tell me that what I'm doing is I'm taking all this information after the fact and then assigning cause to it or whatever. And I didn't know how to make it any more clear to tell him, no, that's not what I'm doing.
Looks like one ship had oranges and vitamin C and a way to preserve their nutrients, and that ship didn't get scurvy, but this other ship is missing something. That's a question, and I would argue, and I think you would agree, that that's actually where you introduce your hypothesis.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm asking you, again, if you have two competing hypotheses, right? Let's say someone else says that's not the case. Is there any way, other than an experiment, to actually arbitrate between the two competing hypotheses?
Yes, because hundreds and hundreds and actually thousands of ships have sailed, and you could look at the records of all of them. You're not producing the data yourself. You're not doing the experiment.
It's an observation.
But if you say yes, but these are observations that confirm what your hypothesis is. If like this is literally how studying the past works. Now we can study evolution in the present, but like this is a little bit of a tangent, but other scientific theories like the Big Bang, we don't recreate the Big Bang. We do recreate certain conditions to like know some things about the first moments of the Big Bang, but literally all of it is just observations. We did the math.
Just data.
We said there should be these predictable things out there in nature that we see, and we found them.
Hold on. Can false assumptions accurately predict phenomenon?
It seems reasonable that could happen.
Okay. If two.
Yeah, Golden Nectar, you are correct. He did say that. I didn't include either of our opening statements in this because opening statements, they're not that juicy or entertaining. But he did say that we don't do... He said something about experiments. I don't remember if he just outright said we don't do evolutionary experiments, which is just completely false. I wanted to talk about that in my cross-examination, but I didn't. I figured he would ask me about scientific experiments on evolution, which I could have rattled off all kinds of them, but it's my way or the highway. Yeah.
Two different models or hypotheses are saying, look, I'm observing the data and you're observing the data. I think this is causing the phenomenon that's predictable. They both have a predictable element to them. One is true, one's false, or maybe neither are true, right? I'm asking you, if someone's looking at data of thousands of ships, I don't care if it's 1 million ships, and it looks correlative that the ships that have food preservation technology and vitamin C don't get scurvy, and the ones that don't, they do get scurvy. That's an observation. That's data. I'm asking a different question. When we introduce a hypothesis of what causes the phenomenon, is there any other way to arbitrate between two competing hypotheses than an experiment? Your answer was, yeah, more data. No, you just said more data.
Yeah.
So no, the answer is no, because I just told you.
What is he trying to... Yeah, with more data... What is it that experiments give you?
Two people can have the same wealth of data and posit different hypotheses about the cause of the phenomenon, and one could be wrong or both can be wrong. The question is, how do you determine in natural science who's got the correct hypotheses other than an experiment?
I literally answered this question for you.
With more data.
What is it that experiments give us? More data.
Causal, I'm not saying...
The data that is produced by an experiment... I'm answering your question. The data that is produced from the experiment can absolutely exist in other cases that have already occurred. So there's no meaningful difference. Experiments are great because you can control
Hold on a
things.
second. I want you all to listen to what he just said. The data post-experiment is no different than the data pre-experiment.
That's not at all what I said. I said the data that is yielded by an experiment is in no meaningful way different than the exact same kind of data from the exact same type of scenario you would set up with the experiment, but it's already occurred.
Okay, so here's the thing. If the question isn't whether or not...
Did James Robert McHerpderp just imply that fulfilled predictions are confirmation bias? Yes. He's saying that you can't collect data. You can't do natural experiments or collect data in nature to confirm a hypothesis or to develop a theory, because the experiment is how you truly delineate, but that's just completely false.
You call the results and information you gain from an experiment data. That's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about whether or not pure data without an experiment can give you a likelihood cause. And I'm saying no, and you're saying yes.
That's because you're wrong. I can explain it to you.
Wow.
I can explain it to you.
Can you develop
time.
a theory? Can you develop a look? Let's do it.
Planet Pearson, the problem is that you can fit any number of theories to the data. It's underdetermined. Jimbob is right that you need a specific different procedure to test the hypothesis. That's really not true. It may be true in some cases. There are some things that have so many like extemporaneous variables that you would have to, but for this particular example on scurvy, I went to his channel to look at what the comments were. I left one comment on there, or maybe it was two, I don't know. But somebody brought up this scurvy thing, and they said, no, because you can't prove that it's not because the ships both had white sails, or something. Like ships with white sails, they also come back with no scurvy. It's like literally first of all, both of the ships would have white sails. So if on one ship they have scurvy and on the other they don't, then no, it's actually not because of that. So, I don't know. I don't think I really don't feel the need to say anything more about it.
But again, there's a ship that comes in and they're sick. There's a ship that comes in that's not sick. We look at the contents of the ship. We see the one ship that's not sick has all of this stuff, right? Vitamin C, preservation. The other one doesn't. We make a correlation. We go, this is pure data right here. We can actually work with this data, right? I'm asking a different question. Can you develop a scientific theory of what causes the condition, illness, without doing an experiment?
Yes.
So why does science need experiment then?
Okay, let me try to bridge the divide that we have here. I think how this originally started was you were trying to get me to tell you how could you get data to support it without the experiment. Now, two ships come in, we make an observation about this ship has a bunch of scurvy, this doesn't. We look at what kind of foods the one ship had, we look at the kind of foods the other ship had. We build a hypothesis that says it's due to these vegetables and fruits or whatever. We don't have to run an experiment to get data that confirms that, because we could literally just watch every single ship that comes in after that point, and we have nothing to do with the way it's set up. Those kinds of things are sometimes called natural experiments. So you can do all of that without setting up, like in a lab or whatever, the conditions for it. Now, what I would say is,
hold on, no, don't filibuster.
Well, no, I was actually going to try to agree with you.
No, this is okay.
The same nonsense about the white sails could be said about his experiment. Yeah, I mean, if I wanted to just be completely dishonest in my argument, I could say, yeah, but Jimbob, your experiment doesn't account for, are there magical leprechauns that interfere every time you run an experiment, but only if your experiment is testing, if the people in your experiment don't eat oranges. Your experiment doesn't account for invisible leprechauns that could be blah blah. So, therefore it doesn't prove anything. So, yeah, if I wanted to be stupid and dishonest, I could do that to poo-poo what he's saying. Yeah, no, I mean, I could not have explained it more clearly the 10 times I explained it.
Okay, go ahead. I'll let you just, in good faith, go ahead.
I will absolutely agree that ideally you would want experiments, like controlled experiments or whatever, because they eliminate a lot of external variables that allow you to laser focus on what you think is happening.
Okay, I'll ask a question. Let's say we didn't know what caused scurvy, and there was a grant out with two scientists, right? If one scientist was you and one scientist was me, right, and there was a reward for who can develop the scientific theory of what causes scurvy, would you go ahead and present just the correlative argument of the data between ships, what they have and what they don't have, and one clearly correlates to the sickness and one doesn't? Or I do an experiment introducing introducing and removing oranges and food preservation technology, and I repeat that over and over again. Who's going to get the second grant, me or you?
I don't know.
You know what's funny about this? I probably would be more likely to get the grant because my test doesn't require me to spend any money, because these ships are going to go out. Like, I'm basically just riding along with this capitalist endeavor of doing commerce with ships on the ocean, right? You could say like we would just supply one group with fruit and the other we wouldn't, and that would like literally be our only cost. Whereas the other one, the overhead would be enormous. Somebody pointed that out. I don't know who. I don't remember who in the comments, but I thought that was actually pretty nice. Grant issued? Yes, $10. I'm going to go buy some oranges with that. Actually, I have oranges in my kitchen, so I don't need to. But thank you anyways.
I am. Why? Because I developed a scientific theory using an experiment, and you didn't develop a scientific theory, and you just merely made a correlative assumption. The difference between a correlative assumption, or let's call it a hypothesis, and another hypothesis is the only arbiter for who's correct in their hypothesis is an experiment.
Jimbob, the problem there is you and I are going to have the same data. It's just that you obtained your data in a different way. I'm going to have data that says if they eat fruits and vegetables, they don't get scurvy, and so will you.
Oh.
I think that most succinctly just completely buried whatever his attempt here was. I don't remember how he responded to it.
Look, the same data that's happening, for instance.
Yeah, okay, so he just short-circuited. That's how he dealt with it.
And so will you.
Oh, look, the same data that's happening, for instance, let's say, I couldn't think of a more simple example than this, but I'm going to have to try to think of an even simpler causal example. Let's say poison, okay? Let's say someone's poisoned, and we don't know what caused it. What's the poison, right? You say, well, there's a bunch of poison in this room that's kind of toxic, so it's probably that caused it. And I go, well, there's a variation of poisons here that may have caused it. And you go, yeah, there might be a variation of poisons that caused the death of this person consuming it. You're saying to develop a scientific theory, you don't actually need to introduce the poisons and test which one causes the kind of condition or death. You can just assume, because there's poisons around, that your scientific theory is pure data. There's poisons, and maybe he ingested poisons, right? That's all you're saying, right? We have access to the same data. The problem with your pseudoscience is that the only way to develop a scientific theory, right? Let's look, I'll make it simpler. I choose one poison, and you choose another. They're both in the room. Right? Peterson goes with this one, and I go with this one. I say, oh shit, Peterson, we have competing hypotheses. How are we going to develop a scientific theory of which of the poisons killed this person, right? Can you imagine the coroners taking Planet Peterson's approach to science? Can you imagine what that would look like? They don't need to do a scientific experiment to investigate what causes.
In the 1800s. Like literally what you're talking about, John Snow in London in the 1800s did this. He was noticing cholera outbreaks, and what he did was he mapped all the city's wells, and then he mapped where like human waste was being dumped, and then he was able to conclude, or he thought that it was caused by the human waste, and then he mapped out the locations of all the wells in London, and then the locations of where the human waste was being dumped, and he found, look, the cholera outbreaks are happening in these specific spots,
That's
and they're not
correlative
happening
data.
in these other spots.
That's correlative data. That's
Now,
great and
what
useful.
you could do,
agree.
What you could do from that point to advance the theory is say, okay, well, why? What causes cholera?
Yeah,
well, I think that it's not just poop; it's bacteria in the poop.
That's
so you can
right.
advance
now
the
we're getting
theory that
somewhere.
way. Yeah.
This didn't help him in any way. Like, yeah, an experiment could give you a deeper level of what causes it, but it's not required. Again, exactly like the fossil record, the common descent is the cause behind the existence of transitional forms. But we also now know today that genetics is part of that as well. The common descent part is still true. Genetics is just more data along that line. Similarly, it's true that human waste can cause cholera outbreaks, but it's also true that there's something else there, that it's specifically bacteria in human waste that gives us the disease. So,
what you could do from that point, just poop, it's bacteria in the poop.
That's
so you
right.
can advance
now
the
we're getting
theory that
somewhere.
way. Yeah.
Well,
but
you're
you're
that's not the
pretending
theory
that
yet.
you can't get the
Stop,
same
dude.
kind of data.
Stop.
Yeah, I stopped.
You just posited the hypothesis. You said advance the theory. No, you don't. You're basically saying you can get a scientific theory without doing comparing and arbitrating between the two hypotheses. Okay, again, Eric, we're at a party. It's a murder mystery. There's a death. Peterson says, dude, that shrimp has poison in it. And I go, dude, this other thing, there's a poison bottle right here with a jabber on it, like a little pricker, right? And you go, well, I think the shrimp caused the death. And I go, I think this poison caused the death. Right? So the question is, how are we going to arbitrate between your hypothesis, the shrimp caused it, and my hypothesis if we have the same data? There's data. There's shrimp. There's this. There's a dead person. How are we going to arbitrate between the two competing hypotheses?
Jon Snow took away. He made it so people couldn't get water from the well, and the cholera went away. Yeah, I do remember that now. I was really just going off of what I could remember off the top of my head, but I do remember that he did that. Yeah.
Hypotheses.
You could, in real time, have different groups of people eat the shrimp and then collect data that you could collect.
Is that a scientific experiment?
You could collect data in the present.
Is that a hold on?
Or you could get the exact same kind of data by looking at events like this that have already occurred.
Dude, what you just said is feed the rest of the group different things. I agree. The two
there's more
maniacal
than one way.
scientists. Hold on. How else? No. You just said the proper way. Introduce the variable X shrimp and variable X1 poison. Inject people with it. And then that's an experiment.
Yeah.
And then you could tell what happened, right? I'm saying, how would you know, other than doing that, how would you know what caused the death?
Again, you could look at, it's kind of weird to call it a historical record in this case, but we could look at, like,
Four and a half minutes left, and let's try to keep it all on topic.
This literally does happen. I mean, we're seeing it with outbreaks of avian influenza now, or like with the E. coli outbreak with McDonald's. I mean, we already know that E. coli causes food poisoning, but it's like, well, was it from the lettuce? Or actually, it was from the onions for McDonald's. Well, let's track down the onions. Let's track down the farm. Let's track down the distribution. Let's look at the cases of people getting sick around the world. We're not performing an experiment, but we're confirming our idea there nonetheless.
Look.
Experiments
the
are great.
idea-
It's not the only way.
I didn't ask about what you think confirms, because there's two different hypotheses that correlate with the data accurately and accurately predict. If the fact of the matter is
We were gonna do some guitar playing, but Jimbob just said no. He said he can do Travis picking, which I cannot do. Travis picking is complex and it sounds really cool. The weird thing about guitar is you can be so specialized in guitar, like somebody that can play slide guitar. The vast majority of people can't play slide guitar. So if you're going to have a guitar off and one guy plays slide, then the other guy, it's like, well, I can't do that, but I can do something completely different that maybe the other guy doesn't know how to play. So then it's just kind of like, I don't know. The only way for a guitar off to really work is if two people agreed, we're going to learn these 5 songs, the same ones, and we're going to play them and see who does them better, I guess.
competing hypotheses could both correlatively predict things, we're asking a different question in natural science. You said that E. coli, we know what coli causes this. Well, that's interesting because that's a claim of natural science, that E. coli causes this type of sickness, right? We wouldn't know that unless we isolated E. coli and introduced it into bodies to see what it caused to do.
But you could know that it's caused by human waste, literally just by looking at historical data.
Now, if there's a whole shit ton of food, and it turns out that people are eating all sorts of food, and lettuce is one of those foods, we have to determine which food correlates to the sickness. Now, with higher resolution, we look at the lettuce and we go, oh shit, it's nothing about the lettuce. There's actually something on the lettuce. It comes from feces. It's causing this. Let's say we didn't know what E. coli was, but we only knew that lettuce seemed to be the correlative agent here. Well, the only way you can develop a scientific theory in regards to the data you have is to investigate what it is that's actually entering the body, introduce it to the body, remove it from the body with 2 sample sets, do a scientific experiment, and then see what happens. Is it null? Does it verify your hunch that this little microscopic piece of shit went into someone's stomach and caused all this brutality internally? Yes, you can actually introduce it. That's the problem. To tie it back to evolution, observation is
Allie, that's a perfect question. It wasn't the topic for the debate, but that's the perfect question.
Fossils in the past look like fossils in the future, or not even fossils. Looks like something in the past. They have similar traits, right? Yeah. I ask, what causes this? Peterson says, common descent causes this. I say, interesting. How do you introduce common descent and remove it such you know that it's causal to this phenomenon? He says, you can't do that. That's a concession that you can't introduce and remove common descent.
Yeah, the speed is up 1.5% or 1.5 times.
Well, you can't remove it because you can't change the past.
If you can't take it to the scientific method, then
yes, you can.
New hypothesis.
We do evolutionary experiments today.
I didn't ask what you think we do. I'm asking specifically about this observation and your.
Oh, so there are no experiments. Well, digging up the fossils isn't an experiment, but we do experiments today. I don't care what you think we do. I was talking to my cat. That's why I'm looking off camera. I was literally looking at her over here, and I said...
Listen to me. Observation, again.
See, yeah, I looked right at her, and I just went, this fucking guy. Here, let me look at, okay. Just had to pop up Discord for a second there.
There's a thing in the past that looks like a thing in the present. They look similar. The question is, what causes them to look similar? You say a common descent.
Yep.
That's like a category, right? A common descent. This occurs, okay? So How do you introduce common descent and produce the phenomenon, remove common descent, and see if the phenomenon's still there?
1 minute left.
So really all you're saying is we can't make the
I
course
asked a
of history.
question. I
I'm
asked you a
answering your
question.
question.
Cross-examine. Oh, don't tell me what I'm saying. I asked you a direct question. How do you introduce common descent and then remove it to know that it's causing the Y phenomenon?
The idea that because we can't rerun the course of history means that evolution can't be like a scientific theory.
Evading. I didn't ask for a
so
meta. I
completely
didn't ask for a
stupid.
meta. I did not ask what you think is stupid. I asked you if you're saying
Yeah, this. How do we add and remove common descent to prove evolution? That really is stupid. I don't know what I would call this. I mean, like, it's true what he's saying, but to me this kind of sounds like he's accusing evolution of affirming the consequent. But that's just that's a reality every single time you do science because it's inductive. What's my cat's name? My cat's name is Kitty Cat Peterson. Yeah, so I don't want to say it. Add and remove common descent. So, like with evolutionary experiments today, like with the Richard Lenski experiment, all of the E. coli in that experiment come from a common ancestor, the E. coli they started the experiment with, but they're kept in different flasks. And when they see evolutionary changes occur in one of them, they can see that those particular changes don't turn. But that's not really adding and removing common descent. I mean, it is actually in a way. I'm just trying to think if there's a way you could use that to satisfy what he's saying. I'm not sure if there is. Yeah, I don't know.
natural science that common descent causes the Y phenomenon. I ask you a scientific question. How do you introduce the independent variable common descent into a situation and remove it so you know that it's causing the phenomenon of similarities? Just say you can't answer it and go to a new hypothesis, dude. Bite the bullet.
No, well, we could confirm
No,
it in
you're gonna
different
double down?
ways. We could test the genetics of archosaurs
Time
and
is up.
birds today,
You
and
wanna
then we
finish?
could. Yeah, I'm addressing this thing here. So we could confirm it in the present by testing the genetics of archosaurs living today and birds living today, because that is the data that would be predicted by common descent, and then we find it. So, anyways,
You could introduce genetic mutation into an experiment. Yeah. It's just that how do you prove that birds are the descendants of dinosaurs? Because you can't add or remove common descent in there. Well, there aren't any other ancestors of dinosaurs alive today, I guess. But yeah, what you could do. See, here's the thing. What he's asking for, I think this is the problem. What he's asking for wouldn't prove anything. Like, say you take like the E. coli experiment with Richard Lenski. Some of those E. coli evolved the ability to metabolate citrate, and then others don't. So you have one strain that evolved, but the other strains didn't evolve that particular characteristic, even though they all still have the same common descent. So, but in a way, because they're in separate environments, you actually have changed in a way. I don't know. This is just such a odd nitpick. There's no independent variable for things that occurred in the past. But to pretend that therefore it doesn't count as science is just, it's so dumb. Common descent is a bad independent variable. That's why he's harping on it. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
we're out of time, but
To the discussion earlier, are ethical concerns considered when suggesting that?
The cross-examination part, I don't know, there's not really too much to go over. So, I don't know. I turned 48 minutes into an hour and a half. So, oh no, where am I? Here I am. Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to take questions from you guys for a little while, and then I'll probably go. So, what's up, YouTube? The amount of common descent is how far back did the common ancestor live? So having one population letting it speciate and then letting them drift apart will show the correlation. Yeah, like the lizards on that Mediterranean island that switched to their diet, and their internal anatomy changed and their external anatomy changed. You're not adding and removing common descent, but because you put them in different environments, they have different they have different common ancestors after they're removed, so it kind of satisfies it. Favorite food? Like generically, I guess pizza. My favorite specific food? That's really tricky. There's this spicy pork ramen at the one of the sushi joints here in town that I can't get enough of. And pho. There's this place kind of in the ghetto part of town, but they make the best pho, and they have this deep fried calamari that comes with it's like chili, it's this chili lime sauce. It's basically like chili peppers, and they make like a sauce out of it. I don't know. It's chili oil and chilies and whatever else. But then it's got a bunch of cilantro and lime juice in it too. Oh, I haven't had that in a while, but it's so, oh God, it's so good. What level did I teach? I just taught high school science for 10 years. I don't eat Spanky. Oh, wait. Okay, Austin. I saw you snickering when I was asking him the question about development in the Q and the Q&A portion. I was Gundersmoot. Yeah, no. I thought you were the one that asked him about, is the Earth millions or thousands or billions of years old, and he just wouldn't answer it. What was the agreed upon definition of evolution for this debate? We didn't discuss that. Who's better, Jordan Peterson or Jesse Lee Peterson? Oh, man. I would say Jordan Peterson actually has done good for the world, and I really seriously doubt that Jesse Lee Peterson ever has. How do I stop missing your live streams? I don't know. I plan on doing these between 4 and 5, starting these at between 4 and 5 p.m. Pacific time on weekdays. Didn't you say you were okay with Jordan Peterson for a while? For the first 2 years that he was famous, or maybe 3, I actually liked almost everything he was saying. But then he just started when he started doing Bible stuff, and then when he went into that coma, and then when he took all the, because he got attacked relentlessly, and I think the vast majority of the attacks were absolutely idiotic. Watch those interviews he did early on, where they try to get him, and he just absolutely dragged those idiotic feminists through the weeds. But I think he exposed himself to too much of that, and then he just basically martyred himself and then completely fucked his brain up. I don't know. Jesse Lee Peterson is funny, so that counts. Yeah, I mean, I thought he was serious, but he's just a total troll, so maybe he is better. He wasn't able to handle the internet. Yeah, it's something kind of like that. He collapsed when he joined The Wire. No, he collapsed before that, I think. Well, I don't know. It was about the same time. Are you not a feminist? I would say I'm a humanist. Do I think women should have the same rights as men by and large. Yeah. Does that make me a feminist? Sure. But the people I know that describe themselves that way are insane, radical, hateful bigots. Go on Jesse Lee Peterson and insist he's your dad. That would be funny. Is subscribing and hitting the bell a good way to not miss your live streams? Oh, yeah. I'm the worst self-promoter on the planet, so yeah, maybe that should have been obvious. Have I ever studied sociobiology? Not really. Five more minutes, everybody. The Channel 4 interview with Kathy Newman. Yeah, that was a pretty epic one. There's the other one where he and that lady, they sit. It was so weird. They sit side by side, but like they're like almost like their knees were even with each other and they were facing toward each other, but they were side by side. That interview was, I mean, that's a masterclass in owning idiotic, like feminist talking points. I've never hit that bell for anyone until now. Well, thank you. Ever read Steven Pinker? I've read a lot of Steven Pinker. How many of his books do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. I have more than 4. Where are the other ones? 5, 6. I think I've read 6 of his books. Possibly 7. Oh, yeah, I can probably close out of that Google Meet. Oh, man. What was that guy's name? Owen? That was so fucking funny. I'm just here to mock people that go for low-hanging fruit or whatever he said. I was like, hey, Owen, if you know so much, if you think you can own me, I'll give you the Google link right now. And he never said a word after that. How sure are we that Jesse Lee Peterson is a troll? Well, he had that guy, Matalan, whatever his name is, on the show, and they just like went back and forth saying stupid shit. So Jesse Lee Peterson probably is kind of racist toward black people, which is kind of a weird, own goal type of thing, whatever. But no, I think, I really don't think he means most of what he says the way he puts it. Yeah, the thing with Aaron Ra, yeah. What's my IV? I have no idea what that even means. Omar, that was his name? Oh, yeah. You can see Jesse Lee in his not troll mode. He's a pastor and his church stuff is on YouTube. Well, I'm not going to watch that, but do you think that atheists on YouTube are doing a good job at expressing ideas in an honest manner in general? In an honest manner? Yeah, absolutely. Do they have a messaging problem? I don't know. They might. I don't really watch. I watch very little of other atheists' stuff on any platform. I really, really do. If I'm on YouTube, If I'm watching YouTube, I'm watching either like basketball stuff, dinosaur stuff, random science facts, history stuff. Yeah, that's about it. What's in your garden? We don't really have a garden. We have a huge number of succulents in the yard. And then I built some planter boxes and we're growing strawberries and we were growing radishes, but our outdoor cat kept using the radish box as a litter box. So I think he killed all the sprouts. Justin is on point. The guys from Dillahunty or whatever are cringe at times. Yeah, I mean, I won't watch The Line, and I don't watch The Atheist Experience either because I don't have enough time to do a lot of that. But like, I won't watch it because like when Forrest is up there and he begins every live stream with a leftist, Marxist, communist, whatever rant about left-wing identity politics, I'm like, yeah, that has nothing to do with atheism, so goodbye. Have I ever looked at my channel demographics? Are most of my subscribers US-based? I've looked at it before, and they are, but oh fuck, how do you even do this? Analytics, or is it in community? Oh no, community, those are comments. Audience, demographics, age and gender. 94.4% male, huh? Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. 58% of my viewers view on phone? That's interesting. 25% are on computer. Huh. Interesting. Top geographies: United States 52%, United Kingdom 10.5%, Canada 5.5%, Australia 4.4%, Germany 2.8%. So there we go. Now you know. Do a Forrest impression? I don't know how to impersonate the guy. Oh yeah, J.L. Warren's stuff is really good. Do they consider iPads phones? No, there was a separate thing for tablets. I probably do most of my YouTube watching on my iPad, actually. Just FYI, I'm pretty sure I was suggested to your channel after watching a bunch of The Line. I mean, it makes sense, but, you know, I have plenty of differences. I wonder, where do you find that? There's like stuff, the YouTube studio will tell you people that watch your stuff also watch. Shit, where do you find that? Where do you find that? I feel like I used to see that all the time. Now I don't know where it is. Yeah, whatever. Okay, one more question. You're one of the more right-wing atheists I've seen. Do you consider yourself conservative? That's a weird thing to say. No, I don't. The only conservative thing about me, or things about me, I'm a capitalist because that's governments don't generate capital. They don't make money. They print money, but they don't make money. So the only way to redistribute wealth is if we allow people to make fabulous wealth and then redistribute it. I mean, what else? Our immigration system is completely fucking stupid. I'm not an open borders person. And all the people that say they're open borders, they literally only started saying that because they don't like Donald Trump. And so their entire identity is wrapped around Donald Trump, and they are just the opposite of him. He says jump, and they say how low. It really is incredibly pathetic and obvious. I mean, like, I don't know. I'm for a well-vetted and meritocratic immigration system. I don't have anything against people seeking asylum or whatever, but our system it obviously doesn't work. We can't just have 5 million people every year come into the country, especially if they don't speak English well, because that literally just makes societies, I don't want to say fall apart, but it makes them dysfunctional in really crucial ways. But who does the distribution? Yeah, the government does the redistribution, but they don't make money. You could be on the rightish end of left wing. I'm sorry if I phrased that poorly. No, you're not the only one. Like, people tell me, like, is Peterson secretly a right winger? It's like, what? No. Like, not at all. PP calls himself a liberal all the time. Yeah, I mean, that's just the easiest way to describe me, I feel like. What's really funny is now leftists are saying, no, liberals are right-wing because liberalism is a right-wing concept. And it's like, you fucking assholes are literally insufferable. But there's no official language in the United States. Yeah, like, we don't have one designated, great, but like pretend you work at a bank, or pretend you're a teacher, and like, or pretend you're a school district. Now all of a sudden 5% of your students speak a language that nobody else does. Or hell, I mean, like, don't even make this about, just Mexico. Have your school district be 7% students that speak 5 different languages that almost nobody else can speak. The amount of money you're going to have to spend to try to equalize the educational outcomes for them, and the way that the teacher is going to be unable to provide services to everybody else because of what they have to accommodate for that, or if you're a bank or whatever, it really just literally isn't a good idea. Peterson needs to dye his hair to pledge allegiance to the party. No, I'm not going to dye my hair blue. I thought about dyeing it white once, like the PewDiePie circa 2017 or whatever. I thought about doing that. You come across as an enlightened centrist more than a conservative? No, I really think that the Republican Party should be classified as a terrorist organization, so I'm not an enlightened centrist. Wait, I said I said 5 more minutes 20 minutes ago, so I'll have to go. You can leave the vetting process to the companies. Language is a very obvious filter, but why require work visas? I mean, we can't start talking about that because then I'll be here forever. Finally, you say something based. Okay, I don't remember what I said, but have I regained the brain cells from that debate? Yeah. Fun fact, I should have put this in my book, Facts That Aren't True, but you can regrow neural tissue. You know what? Hold on. I'm going to open up my Google Doc, because I have a Google Doc for ideas for second editions of my books, and that one's going to have to go in there. Take this with you. Thank you, J-Pump. I will. You can't regrow brain tissue. You can grow back some brain tissue, but yeah. I bought your new book the other day. Oh, well, thank you very much. And for the rest of you, I'm very disappointed that you did not buy facts that aren't true. But there is still time. Anyways, I gotta go.